I won't say my expertise, but I'm more geared toward that rather than talking about lessons learned from the LA fire. So I'll do my best. One thing you need to know, my nose runs all the time. So I will be dabbing my nose, I will be blowing my nose throughout this meeting. And like Eric says, about 25 minutes, so 25 minutes of watching me blow my nose without talking. There you go. So that's what I do. I'm normally the fire, I call myself the fire wise guy. And I am the wise guy. So let's talk about the LA fires. Today we're talking about the lessons learned, but I want to set the stage for that firestorm. And so in order to do that, we have to go back in time. So LA at that time, before the firestorm, and we're talking primarily about the Palisades fire and the Eden fire. I'm not talking about any other fire, and they both share the same kind of characteristics. So when I talk about the wildfire, I'm talking about both fires, just to understand. So LA, a couple seasons ago, experienced wet weather like we all did. So they had 2 very wet seasons. And so lots of rain. And when you have lots of rain, vegetation grows. Vegetation, to me, equals fuel. So they had this 2 seasons of wet weather, followed by a dry season. They're currently in a drought. They have had no precipitations, I don't know, since after January 27, but 8 months prior to January 27, no rain. So in fact, they had, I think, it was like 1/10 inch of rain for 8 months. Nothing. So during that time, they're going through a drought, they have a dry spell, no precipitation, and then they started experiencing record heat wave. The temperature was shooting up, and when the temperature shoots up, it dries out the vegetation. And like I said, vegetation is fuel. So they have all this fuel there. They had no rain, it's a dry season, it's a drought, and they have heat. The only thing missing was wind and an ignition source to start a catastrophic fire. The morning of January 27th, the day of the fire, 6:30, I saw videos of palm trees just bending over. So the wind was already started that morning. 10:30 was the report of smoke behind a ridge, especially in the upper Palisades area. Right behind it, you could hear somebody go, "Oh my God, look, there's smoke." So soon after, fire appeared on that ridge, and with the winds gusting up to 100 miles an hour, steady at 60 to 80 miles an hour, it drove those embers and fire down the hill toward the town of Palisades. Same thing happened with the Eden fire, except that started around 6:30 that evening. So the fire noticed in the canyon report, and the winds drove embers and the fire down toward Altadena. Wind-driven fires are very dangerous. They're unpredictable. And when it blows embers, and I'm going to ask this question. Who here did not see any video of the LA fires? Everybody. I was glued to the TV almost 24/7. I was fascinated by it. I was scared about it. And I thought about Berkeley. That's what I truly thought about. I thought about the things that we were doing in our division. So, you know what embers look like. We describe it, Duncan and I, as a snowstorm, except it's not snow. It's little particles burning, floating through the air, traveling 1, 2, 3 miles ahead of the fire front. It's the embers that we're worried about. 80% of the homes catch on fire from embers. So we'll talk a little bit about what you can do in terms of the lessons learned. So, the perfect storm happened at 10:30. And the fire drifted down to Pacific Palisades, and it took 7 days to get all the fires under control. 7 days. And it continued to burn a few more weeks after when they put out all the slot fires in that area. So think about it, it took over 3 weeks to really put the fire out. The fire started in the wildlife, in the park, up in the hills behind Altadena and behind the Palisade. So, the fire starts, it took days to get it under control. And so here we are talking about the lessons. Let's go over a few stats about that fire. 30 people died in those fires. Over 200,000 people evacuated. That's a lot of people to come out of the hills, in both towns. 130, let's see, what is it? 37,000 acres were burned. 16,000 dwellings were lost. So it went from a wildfire to a wood fire, wildland urban interface. We are sitting in the wood right now. Then the fire traveled down to the flatland. And then it became an urban, suburban conflagration. It's hard for me to say that word. Conflagration. It went from vegetation and buildings to buildings, structure to structure fire. Now when a fire gets to that point where it's structure to structure, it's very hard to control. It's moving fast. In fact, LA was overwhelmed with the fire. What they did is they refocused their efforts into evacuation and saving lives. So that was their primary job that they were going to do for the next day or two. Now the fire ebbed and came back. The winds would change, back up, the weather would cool off, get hot again. So the fire was moving back and forth. Wind speeds, like I said, they were anywhere from 60 to 80 miles constant wind, gusting up to 100. So, what are the similarities between LA, particularly that area, and Berkeley? And there's a lot of similarities. The way I look at things, and I do this in my firewise meetings, is I talk about what influences fire. And it's 3 things: topography, weather, and field. I've added the 4th component, and that's density. And we'll talk about all 4 of them. So topography is the way the land is set up. You're looking at narrow ridges, you're looking at valleys, you're looking at bowls, we call them chutes, where it's like a valley. And all these things influence the spread of the fire, increases the wind speed, increases the heat. And if you look at pictures of Palisades and the fire, you will notice in the background, you can see those ridges. You can see them. In Berkeley, you may not see them, unless you live in a neighborhood that does have. I worked here for 30 years, never paid attention to its fire. My job was to take care of medicals and take care of fires. That's what I did. I came back, and part of my FireWise program is that we come out and we do what we call a wildfire risk assessment. It wasn't until I started doing that I realized the topography of Berkeley. One of the very first places I looked at was Fair Lawn in Queens. You go to that intersection, you can look straight down. There's a new home being built, but it goes straight down. It's steep. You go to Tamalpais, especially around the hairpin turn. You could look down at Cornices, also very steep. All these things contribute. The one that really caught my attention was Sterling. You go to a part of Sterling, you look down, and it's kind of bowl-shaped. You got homes alongside of the bowl, and you got homes right in the bowl. So when I went to Sterling to do, and they became a firewise. When I went to Sterling, the very first thing that you said to me was, "What do you think?" And all I could say was, "I see fire. I see fuel." And that's where we started from. She agreed. So topography is very, very important. The next thing is weather. Weather is, you look at the weather that was down in LA at the time, they were going, like I said, they were going through a heat wave. They had high temperatures. That high temperature, it dries out everything. It sucks the moisture out of the soil, it sucks moisture out of the plants. We're talking about grass, trees, bushes, and it's sucking the moisture out of your garden. It's sucking the moisture out of wood, fences, decks, and it's sucking the moisture out of your home. Making it, I won't say ready to burn, but more susceptible as if it wasn't hot. So they have the high heat and the weather. Also, I've looked in comparison to the two, and LA was going through it. And if you think about what Berkeley goes through all year round, during the summer, it starts to warm up. We start getting heat waves, 85 degrees. And also we have winds. Now, the winds predominantly in Berkeley blow from the west. They come out of the west, they blow over. So during the day, Berkeley warms up, nice, comfortable. It gets hot maybe. And then toward the evening, the westerly winds kick in. And it cools everything down because it's blowing right across the bay, picking up that coolness and moisture. And it's delivered to us. So we cool down in the evening, and then we start it all over. So we have something that's in common with LA. Also, we get wind, and talking about the winds. So once the winds are westerly, that's fine. We know how to deal with that. It's when the winds come out of the opposite direction. And we call them Diablo winds, and LA calls it the Santa Ana winds. So they come from out of state. They come from what they call the Great Basin, Utah, Oregon, Nevada. And high pressure builds up, it pushes out the air beneath it, causes wind. The wind spreads out in a 360 pattern. And the winds that come toward us, the winds coming toward us, they hit the Sierras. That wind goes up, and then it goes down into Central Valley. It picks up more speed, and it picks up more heat. Goes across the Central Valley. Then it hits the coastal range. Same thing happens. It goes up the coastal range and comes down to Berkeley. When I used to come to work on those days, I'd drive up to Station 2 right there on Berkeley Way, and I'd see all the leaves blowing in the wrong direction. They're blowing toward the bay. And I would get in my car, and I would come up to the hills right away and just patrol. And we do certain things on those days. We set up a patrol. We hire extra people just in case. So the Diablo winds are something to think about. So then we have fuel. If you look at the pictures of LA, it's not green. It's kind of brown, arid looking. They have a lot of shrubs, scrub brushes. You look at Berkeley, it's green. Everything's green. However, think about this. Both styles of fuel is fuel. Whether it's green or if it's a scrub brush, it's fuel. It's going to burn. So that's where we're common. I told you I put the fourth one in, and I did this on purpose. And that is density. Both cities were really dense. If you look at pictures of the aftermath down in LA, all you see are foundations right next to foundations right next to other foundations. The only thing that you might see living are the trees and some bushes that survive. So I think that having homes so close, when I go out and do Firewise, neighbors can come out and they go, look, and they're touching their neighbor's home. That's dense, and that's fuel. Other things to consider are also that we're adding to Berkeley. So when I came back to work, drove up University Avenue, I was surprised about how many high-rises we're starting to have. We're going vertical in Berkeley. Downtown Berkeley and University Avenue, and there's other areas where we're just going up because there's no more land to go out. So one of the issues that came about that I was aware of was the issues of ADUs, which is adds more to your hills. More cars, more people, more structures. So we're a very dense city, so was Altadena and Pacific Palisades. So we have those four things working against us. Now, we can't do anything about weather. We can't do anything about topography. We can't do anything about density. But we can do something about fuel. We'll talk a little bit about that, about fuel management, about certain practices that you can do to protect your homes. So, the one thing that the fire service and other organizations have noticed is that fires are changing. Now, you could say it's climate change. I'm not a scientist, I can't speak to them, but weather is changing. Now, in the early 1900s, they had something similar to what we're experiencing now. High intensity fires, big fires, fires that burn, ember driven. And so they had that in the early 1900s. Toward the mid 1900s, the ocean pattern changed and started bringing cooler temperatures back inland. Then around 1980, it started going back to high temperatures, and it started turning into high intensity fires. So we're seeing this. Scientists have seen it. Fire departments have had front row seats to watching how these fires are evolving. And when we look at the high intensity fires, the Camp Fire, Tubbs Fire, the Lahaina Fire was raging. Now we have the Eaton Fire and the Palisades Fire. So that's one of the things that we pay attention to. That's one of the things that we're learning. Maybe you're learning this for the first time, thinking about the fires that you see on TV, that they are burning hotter, longer, and faster. They're overwhelming the resources. So what can we do about this? There's two principles that we're promoting and have been promoting, and it's been promoted for years, and that is home hardening and vegetation management. Hopefully everybody's familiar with the term home hardening, because the one thing that we're interested in are the amplifiers. So with home hardening, it's the things you can do to your home that protect it from embers. And a couple of the things that we can talk about are Class A roofs, meshing your vents, creating a zone zero, and so much other things that you can do. Right now, it's a growing field. I believe it's a growing field, and that is the construction business around home hardening. We're starting to see people who are saying they're experts in home hardening, and they are. I've been to quite a few demonstrations, and they explain everything, what they're doing to protect your home from embers. But if you could do anything, it's getting a Class A roof, mesh your vents, and start with zone zero. There's other things like multi-pane tempered windows, gutter guards. If you have a plastic gutter, and I have never seen a plastic gutter yet in all the firewise meetings I've had, but if you have plastic gutters, replace it with metal gutters. Now, Cal Fire has this term. When it's time to replace your windows, replace it with double pane, multi-pane windows that are tempered. So I like that term, when it's time to replace, because all the things that you can do in home hardening could be quite expensive. So there's a lot of information. You can Google it. We're providing that information to you. You can go on our websites, and you can learn about home hardening. It doesn't have to be expensive. There's a lot of inexpensive ways to harden your home. And we have, Cal Fire has a website, Ready for Wildfire, and they have a page that says inexpensive things that you can do to your home to harden it. Vegetation management. We're looking at that zone zero that we're talking about. When I started doing Firewise,
I was very soft on that. That's when, they go, you mean I have to get rid of my plants? Aunt Julie planted that 50 years ago, and I'm not gonna rip it up, blah, blah, blah. And I used to go, yeah, maybe you could keep it, as long as you keep it lean and green and healthy, get rid of any of the dead material that might be in that plant. Now, I'm totally the opposite. I'm saying, don't have any combustibles. Now, if you are, we're helping you with that in terms of, if you are gonna have vegetation right against your house, and that's zone 0, that'll be in potted plants, potted, non-combustible pots. So that when the weather changes, you start to get high, red flag days, extreme fire weather days, you can move those plants away. Get rid of the mulch. Most people are kind of aware of that already, and they're removing their wooden mulch. Some mulches are a little bit more resistant, large diameter ones, or partially decomposed mulch. Just recently, I got a question over in Park Hills. They just, you know where the fountain is? Yeah. So, this woman just replanted everything, and the question was, I'm going to put wood mulch there. Is that okay? And so, Chief Kevin, who runs the Wildland Urban Interface, responded back to us and use partially decomposed mulch. That'll be fine. Now, it wasn't in a 5-foot zone of any structure. It's in the middle of the street. It's an island. The thing that's really, really important, and when I say this, is it's got to be a community-wide effort. It can't be just 1, 2, 3 homes doing it. That's not going to be sufficient enough. It needs to be a community-wide effort. Everybody chipping in, doing what they're supposed to do to reduce the chances of their own homes catching on fire, their neighbors' homes catching on fire, and the community. So, I had a chance to go to San Francisco Fire, and I didn't take it because I really liked what Berkeley is all about. And the community is part of it. That's what attracted me. It's a kumbaya city with a kumbaya. Although we do get disputes. Go to city council meetings, you'll hear about it. You go to community meetings, there's always disputes, but we work together still, even if we have differences. So we need to work together on this. So I'm really promoting that. The fire department's promoting it. And so we hope you think about that. Now, I can't speak specifically to the Palisades fire and the Eat fire of how involved they were, these efforts that they can do, but I'm sure that it could have made a difference. I really do. So what I'm asking you to do, and this is part of the lesson, is to follow the research. Listen to the experts. Listen to, well, I'm not an expert, but we have experts. Listen to where it's going. Don't make it up in your mind going, this is not going to happen. We have a program called the Ambassador. What it is, civilians work with us, they volunteer, and they go out into the community, and they talk about the defensible space inspections. They talk about anything. So I was out walking with one of those ambassadors. He was the council member that was responsible for UC Berkeley area. So he was going around, I was watching him, knocking on doors, talking to the community. And we came across a gentleman, and real nice guy. And in the end of our discussion, he goes, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to save my house. When that fire comes, I'm going to lose my house. And I don't believe that.
Would you say that again?
So I met a gentleman, and he said, if there's a wildfire, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about it. And he took a fatalistic view of what a wildfire is. He said, I'm going to lose my home. He was resigned to it. You can do something. The practices, the principles of home hardening and vegetation management, is what you can do. And you can do that now. We have a lot of information for you. There's resources all over. Firewise is growing here in the Berkeley Hills, and they're a resource to themselves. They have a website, berkeleyfirewise.org, and they're sharing information. So you're not alone if you feel like it. There are people out there that are very interested. Michelle, who couldn't be here today, who organized this, who's one of those people. He orchestrated, or he engineered the website along with Ruth down off of Keeler. So between the two of them, they are making that website very robust. You can get a lot of information about not only Firewise, but things that are happening in the hills. Last week, I attended a home hardening demonstration down here on Grizzly Peak. I don't know if any of you went. It was fantastic. We had Councilmember Blackaby there. He gave a little speech on Ember. We had one of those experts on home hardening, a contractor. She talked about it, gave some demonstrations, and I did my little Firewise speech. So it was very well attended. So, wrapping it up, there's going to be a lot more information coming from LA. They're still investigating, they're still researching. I just read something from IBHS, Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. The Zone Zero we were talking about, they are urging LA County that the footprint of the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire, they encourage them when they rebuild those homes to build to Zone Zero and to other standards. They have a program, Wildfire Prepared Homes. It's kind of similar to Firewise, but much more restrictive. And they want you to do certain things. So that's what they're promoting down in LA right now. That they're urging the homes that are being built to be built to wildfire prepared homes plus standards. So, and I kind of mentioned it, just wrapping up, is take action now. You have so many resources available to you. You have the fire department, you have the city,